Then we're recording. So welcome to this tutorial on the new Final Cut Pro interface and a little bit more advanced editing. So we're going to be working on the handshake project. So the students went out and filmed based off of what was shot in previous years. Your job as an editor is to choose in and out points. So you're going to be looking through your footage for the proper kind of start and end points in each clip. Final Cut Pro is pretty awesome in terms of speed. So if you see here, I'm not hitting any buttons to play. I'm just scrubbing with the mouse left to right. So it's called hover scrubbing. My favorite way to kind of get an edit started is actually doing most of the edit work, the decisions, in this left-hand window here. You do hover scrubbing, and then you hit I for in point, O for out point. So I would go through and I'd kind of say, all right, which is my best? So it looks like they were a little dark on these two. Looks like they fixed exposure and focus on this one. So we're going to start on action. So that's another thing that I'm seeing. You don't want to, like, if I hit the play bar, you don't want to see kind of like somebody starting to walk. You want to get them walking. So I'm actually going to get when they're both in frame, right about here. I'm going to hit I for in point, and I'm only going to get them like one step. Another thing that you could do instead of hover scrubbing is using the space bar for timing. So that can be done on the timeline or in this top window here. I like to kind of hit the space bar and then hit the space bar a second time to see when my out point's going to be. And you know, if I think I did a good job at that out point, I'll then mark it. So O marks the out point. Actually, I was just hovering in the area. So you got to pay attention to where your mouse is sometimes. If it's in either window, it will do the command wherever the time bar was. So I actually made a mistake there. So I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to hit the space bar, and then that's where my out point's going to be. And get my mouse out of the window and hit the O. Still not working. Let's try that again. I for in point, space bar, O for out point. There we go. So the square is the clip in point to out point that you would then bring to the timeline. Now there's another marking technique in Final Cut Pro that's pretty awesome. It's favoriting. So F favorites, and you're going to see a little green line up above. So you may be using more than one part of this clip. If you set an in point and an out point, like you can set multiple, so here's an I and an O, and if I wanted to kind of remember both those points, I would favorite them. So if I hit the F key here, you'll see a green line at the top. If you click on the green lines, it reselects those in and out points. So I'm actually going to get rid of that. The U key will get rid of the favoriting that you've done. So I can scrub this clip so it looks like they come and they shake hands and then they stop and then they keep going. So it might be cool to get in this clip too when they stop and shake hands. So maybe like here, I, and then here, O, there's a favorite. And then also the leaving, so let's go I here, and then they walk, and then maybe we'll let them exit frame, and then O, and then F for favorite. So I've just favorited 3 clips in here that I can then either drag to the timeline or key command to the timeline. Key command is so much faster than clicking and dragging. I got one of my first jobs in the industry because I knew all the key commands for the application. It was Pro Tools. I knew more key commands than the guy that owned the studio. He was the guy that was running the session. He sat me in as the engineer, and I had things moving so much faster than he ever did. And he was, asking me questions of like, how'd you do that so fast? So learning the key commands is the best way to save yourself time. But ultimately, when you're in a room full of people, if somebody has an idea, you're not hunting around to kind of make that idea happen. You make it. You can execute quickly. So the key commands to get things to the timeline, they're actually little icons here. So if you wanted to click on stuff, you could. If I hover, it'll tell you. So connect the selected clip to the primary storyline. If you notice, it's got like a line and the clip is above. So that's kind of like what we did with the first project, like a lower third on the second layer above. That's a connected clip. And then insert the selected clip in the primary storyline or selected storyline. So if nothing is selected, wherever that time bar is, it'll place the clip and split everything around it, and they'll kind of like magnetize to the edges. So So this a magnetic timeline with Pro Tool, or Final Cut Pro. So that's a good one. And then say I just drug it to the timeline. If I was to do a bunch of these, if I put the timeline there and I hit this, it would put it in the center and everything else would kind of split around it. I'm going to undo all that. Command Z is undo. But the key commands for these, if you hover, it'll tell you Q all the way to the right there, W, and E. So it's the top kind of 3 keys at the top left-hand corner of your keyboard. That's how I remember it. You know, it's just kind of looking at those icons. If you forget, you can see, all right, one is connect to storyline, the other one is insert, the other one is append that puts it on the end. So if I have a bunch, so here's a bunch, and if I have the time bar here, if I hit the append key, it'll jump it to the end. If I hit the W key, it'll insert it right where I'm placing it, right in the middle. And then if I hit the connect to storyline, it jumps it to the top there. I'm going to Shift Z zoom so you can kind of see this. So let's say I want to place something here. If I hit the Q key, it'll put it at the top above. So connect, insert, append. Append means put on the end. And then this is new with Final Cut Pro, the latest update that we just installed. This is an overwrite edit, so wherever the time bar is, you could put in, let's say, just the video. So if you notice right there, it just overwrote what was there. Undo, you can kind of see that it went from wherever the bar was and overwrote with the in and out point that was set on the master timeline. Or you could do just the audio. So if you wanted to do that, you could do that. And then if I hit this button, it'll just put audio there, but it overwrites the master timeline. So I'm actually going to undo that, and I'm going to set this back to, I guess, just video or just audio. Applies to the whole button set. And it looks like you can hit a key command to switch those. What is this? Oh, D. D is the key command to do that. So if you hit D, it's going to overwrite wherever the time bar is. Undo, 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 undo. Okay, so that's a little bit about how to kind of hover scrub, in-point, out-point set, and then get things to the timeline using key commands. So much faster when you do stuff like that. Also favoriting, so you can kind of remember the in-points and out-points you set if you set multiple across one clip. I'm going to trash everything I got on the timeline, and I'm just going to go and hover scrub through and do a fast input-output edit, and I want to talk a little bit about pacing and match action editing. So here they're kind of out of frame. We want to get maybe when they're getting the handshake. So right about there is where I'm going to pick my endpoint, and then there we'll do 1 or 2. We're going to get the close-up. So this would depend on what you choose from the preceding frame. So like where they are with their handshake, if they're at the up point or the down point, you would want to choose the same on your endpoint of the very next clip. So maybe it is time to start putting stuff to the timeline. So let's get them entering. I'm going to select my favorite and E append edit. That's putting it at the very next or last point on the timeline. Since there was nothing, it jumps to the front. I think what we want to do from there is get bust shot approaches. Did you guys get that when you shot that? You got kind of over the shoulder approaches. Did we get bust shots? You get them?
Wait, what do you mean by bust?
Like medium to bust as they're approaching, like looking on at camera. Doesn't look like I have it here. Okay, so I'm going to use the over the shoulders then, see what that looks like. So here we got one profile, and then we cross over and flip to the other side. But you guys actually cross the line here, so that flips the perspective audience-wise. I'm actually thinking we're not going to use that one. So I might just go from my extreme long shot to my medium where they meet to, once they're shaking hands, we'll go to our extreme closes, back to the close-up, and then either the split from the medium shot or the split from the long shot. So we got them coming in. They do their, what's going on Okay, so we have them walking through. We're going to grab this medium shot. We might actually have to get them to go longer. So the good part about setting in point and out point up in this area here is that even though the out point is set, once you get to the timeline, you can still change it. So we're going to get them a little closer. If you look at the right window here, you'll see the out point that we just set. They're just about reaching out. And then I'm going to get kind of right where they're finishing that reach here, set an in point, and then out point on the down, and then E append edit that puts it on the end. So if we look at that cut, we have the hands out, and it looks like they're getting closer here than they are here, so I'm actually going to go here. This is another awesome key command. Option bracketing. It's next to the P key on the keyboard. So option in bracket, option out bracket will do a ripple delete edit. So if I option in bracket, where I'm hovering, I have to have the timeline selected. If I option in bracket where I'm hovering, option in, why is it not working? There we go. I guess you had to have the clip selected. Option out, see if that works. I guess you have to have the clip selected for the bracket commands to work. I don't remember that being the case in the other version of Final Cut. So basically you have the clip selected, and then you can kind of scrub to where you want it to begin, and then hit option in bracket. And then at the out of the clip, so let's watch this cut. So they get to the down stroke there. Maybe we will go to the close here. So we're going to go to down, and I'm going to set I for in, and then maybe 1 full, and then O for out, and then E for append edit, and let's see what the 3 cuts now look like. So spacebar, and then I'm going to cut to my closes. So here we have a smile. There's just the eyes. Here's just the eyes. I think I'm going to go with this one. This one looks to be a little bit out of focus. It's nice to see the smile, but if you're going to use this shot, I would tilt down and put the eyes up on the third and the lips on the third. So this one I would say tilt down a little bit. But we're going to go with this one, and maybe we'll go with a blink so there's some action. So right there, in point, blink, out point, and then E for append edit. It's actually probably too long. Blink. We're going to go with 1 blink, so select the clip, see where the beginning of the blink starts, and option in bracket. So that kind of edited this clip now down without having to click and drag the edge of the clip over and kind of find that in point. I think it's a slower way to do that if you could just hover scrub and use the option bracketing command. And then we're going to go with the second close. So here we'll do the eyebrows. We're going to go I for in and O for out. Let's see what that looks like. So it's kind of funny. One of the things that I covered with a student when we were going through this earlier was it might be nice, because the project is so symmetric, like all the shots are kind of like you have this kind of symmetry thing going on. When you cut to reveal both characters, you may want their frame, the in point out points to be identical. So you guys know that key command now, setting the duration. Oh, that's kind of cool. It tells you how long it is here, how many frames in yellow. So if you control D, it's telling you that you're 17 frames long here, whereas now this one is 18 frames. So if we go control D and then type in 17, enter, now we've made each of their closest identical. So at this point, we may want to cut back away to either the long shot or the medium shot where they're going to split and exit frame. So let's go with the closer up one. So here's our medium, and then they're going to split the handshake and continue. So maybe we'll go right where they're on that last down. So I for in, and then they start to crisscross, O for out, E for append edit. Now it's on the timeline. Let's see what that looks like. And then we're cut to where they're crisscrossed and exiting frame here. I for in, and then we'll take it all the way to the end and E append edit. Shift Z is a global zoom command. So now we're jumped all the way out, and we're going to home to the top of the timeline, spacebar playback, and just watch it through. Okay, there's some kind of awkward thing going on between this cut here. It's kind of like the head positioning. So we might want to choose either one or the other or pick different in and out point frames. So the frames to do that, there's a couple different tools that you can use. A for arrow is a select tool, so you can kind of click on things, and it's a multi-tool. If you go to the edges, you can kind of trim edges. And then this trim tool does some pretty cool stuff. So if I click on the trim tool, or T for trim, so I'll hit T. Notice the tooltip is different. It's no longer an arrow. You can hover in between these two clips and change the in and the out point of what's happening. So if you look at what's going on the timeline, the out point of the first clip is changing, the in point of the second clip is changing simultaneously. And if you look up at the canvas area where you're seeing the cuts, you're seeing the out point of the first cut on the left and the in point of the second cut on the right. So we can kind of get a better frame of where this is, makes the most sense. If you look, on the right, the head forward posture, and then on the left, the head forward posture, you want to find where they kind of look like they're using the same posture. So maybe we'll do like as soon as they split, right there, it looks like they're probably most match action. I'm going to let go. So now let's take a look at that cut. It's a little bit more seamless. They're less kind of out of position from one cut to the next. So that's a really cool tool, the trim tool. There's also the slip tool. So is it slip or slide? I'll have to look it up. But if you're in the middle of this clip here, like let's say we still want this to be 17 frames, but we don't like how he blinks at the end. We're going to click and drag. The in point and out point stays the same, but we're sliding the clip. So I'm going to look at the right side, and I'm going to eliminate the blinking. So now he's got his eyes open the whole time. So let's watch this now. Home to the top of the timeline, spacebar.
What cut is this?
And that's going to be the edited cut.
So
So
not the essential.
this isn't the essential cut. A lot of times students will want to keep way too much stuff. Beginning editors, you just kind of, everything that you shot, you want to keep on that timeline. Like we talked about earlier, editing condenses time and space. You don't need to see them walking. And what I was seeing in a couple of cuts that when I didn't have this instruction out to you guys was we would see 1, 2, 3 steps, and then we would cut to the close-up or like a cross shot of them approaching, and they would take then 1, 2, 3 steps, and it's like you're seeing all this walking. And if they were taking that many steps, if you look at their proximity in this shot, if they were to take 2 more steps, they'd be walking past themselves already. So you got to kind of pay close attention to their screen positioning from one cut to the next. You don't want them to appear closer or further away from one cut to the next. You have to kind of keep all that stuff in mind in order for the action to match up. That keeps, it's called continuity. You want it to seem like the action is continuous, like if you had multiple cameras set up there and you shot it, all at the same time, cutting it live. So that would be my edit cut there. You would want to get approval, and then we would export. All in all, this is 7 seconds long. But I think it tells a decent story. You got the characters that come through, you got the action of them shaking hands, and then their reaction of the handshake, and then them splitting and kind of walking away. So you have a conclusion to this. Some students didn't shoot it this way. They kind of shot it and left them shaking hands at the end. Other students stopped the handshakes and they actually turn and walk in different directions. It's kind of cool that this group chose to shoot and they crisscross. It'd be interesting to see those 3 types of actions back to back and pick which one looks the best, or kind of talk about the psychology of what would happen in each of those instances. Like let's say we didn't get the eyebrow thing here. Let's say we had like a steel kind of like a glazed over look or like a harder look here, or if you smile like that, or then what's the psychology of them turning and walking in different directions? What's the psychology of them crisscrossing? What's the psychology of them, staying with the handshake in that shot? So, all that stuff starts to be, higher thinking skills and storytelling. We didn't quite get to storytelling yet. This is kind of like the beginning phases of storytelling. So that's going to do it for this tutorial, and we'll talk more about key commands and editing for pace as the year progresses.